Those toenails about dry yet, sweetheart? We got some dancing to do.
In all of cinema history, only a few directors have had the privilege of having an entire filmmaking style named after them. There is a Hitchcockian style, characterized by well-crafted suspense, and of course Tarantino-esque style of ultra-violence and whip-smart dialogue. And while their films neatly fit classic genres, there is another filmmaker who cannot be overlooked when discussing this exclusive club, whose work tends to defy any sort of categorization. That is none other than
David Lynch is widely regarded to be America's premier avant-garde filmmaker. You need look no further than the following films: Lost Highway, Blue Velvet, Eraserhead, and The Elephant Man.
with his eccentric taste for creating nightmares in the most unimaginable way possible. You might be surprised to hear that among Lynch's 10 feature films lies a Disney movie. It is undoubtedly the odd man out in his body of work, with even Lynch himself calling it his most experimental film. However, it still contains many of his trademark qualities, certainly enough to be given the Lynchian badge of honor. It is difficult for anyone to wrap their heads around how the same mind who came up with this could also make such a family-friendly film without compromising their creative voice.
I love you, Rosie.
And yet, Lynch managed to pull it off. In this video, we will explore how this was accomplished and take a closer look at one and only David Lynch Disney film. The Straight story is based on a real-life story of Alvin Straight, a 73-year-old war veteran who traveled from Lawrence, Iowa to Mount Zion, Wisconsin, to reconcile with his ailing, estranged brother. Due to a series of illnesses, disabilities, and general stubbornness,
I'm not paying for no x-rays.
Alvin was unable to get a driver's license, so he instead had to go on a lawnmower, driving at what amounts to a pace of a snail. The film premiered at Cannes Film Festival in 1999, where Disney immediately snatched up the distribution rights. It received a G rating from the MPAA, making it the first and only Lynch film suitable for general audiences.
What's the number for 911?
Notably, The Straight Story came out only 2 years after Lost Highway, a surreal blend of neo-noir and horror that shocks and confuses with its disjointed narrative full of sex and violence. Earlier that decade, Lynch made Twin Peaks' Fire Walk with Me, where he again, through horror, deals with topics such as sexual abuse and underage drug use. And prior to that, he directed Wild at Heart, an unhinged roller coaster ride into madness that combines The Wizard of Oz, unexpected graphic violence, and deranged performances from Nicolas Cage and William Dafoe. If you even suggested that Lynch's next film would be squarely under the Disney banner, most people would have thought you lost your mind. And while it's true that The Straight Story is an anomaly among Lynch's work, it still shares many filming and storytelling techniques. An essential part of any Lynch film is the uncanny, the way he presents something safe and familiar in a way that feels corrupted, dangerous, and inhospitable. Something as simple as a car ride or a family dinner. Every Lynch film revolves around this conflict between the familiar and the uncanny, with evil force that invades the seemingly safe space. In The Straight Story, however, we get the safe and familiar place without any kind of lurking evil, but that safe space still carries echoes of Lynch's previous work. This much is clear to see when comparing the opening scenes of Blue Velvet and The Straight Story. They are in fact almost identical. Both films establish seemingly peaceful setting and ease us in with the same dreamy tone right down to the unsettling turn of events. However, while in Blue Velvet we are taken beyond the veil of an idyllic town, with creepy music and insects gearing us up for the bad things that are about to happen. The most we get in The Straight Story is an elderly man who lost his balance and is unable to get up, but is too proud to call for help.
Dorothy, put the phone down.
In this way, The Straight Story only flirts with the evil space of other Lynch films, and instead stays more firmly rooted in the real world. At the same time, it carries enough of Lynch's cinematic DNA that fans wouldn't be blamed for waiting for the other shoe to drop, for all of the pensive silence to build up to a terrifying reveal or a shocking horror. For here, Lynch creates a place that is Blue Velvet's Lumberton, North Carolina, without the cruelty of Frank Booth, or Wild at Heart's Big Tuna, Texas, without the sinister madness of Bobby Peru. Nonetheless, there is still a thin veil of idiosyncrasy keeping you on your toes, but ultimately doesn't pay off in a way you would expect from a Lynch film. We can see this in a few interactions throughout the film, like here, when Alvin and the owner of a hardware store argue over the sale of a grabber.
That's my grabber, Alvin.
Well,
As if it's an irreplaceable, high-ticket item.
That's a darn good grabber, Alvin. They're hard to come by, Alvin.
Or here, when dim-witted twin brothers mechanics
Shut up, Danny.
are somehow persuaded by Alvin's casual bargaining skills to lower their charge.
where I come from, I would say that was a little rich for a can of Iowa oil.
Take the oil, no charge.
And in what's the most Lynchian scene of the entire film, Alvin comes across a woman after she hits a deer with her car. She's frantic, sobbing, and delivers this speech.
I've tried everything a person could do, and still, every week, I plow into at least one deer. I have hit 13 deer in 7 weeks.
Just like other trademark Lynchian scenes, it keeps us engaged and looking for the answers, but ultimately leaves us even more puzzled.
And I love deer.
In each of these instances, the strange and out of the ordinary is treated with borderline indifference. Whereas you or I might have a strong reaction to any of these things, Alvin and the characters are non-reactive, as if they're seeing something that is completely normal.
Edward loved his riding mower.
This normalizing of the abnormal, however subtle it may be, has the effect of creating Lynch's signature dreamlike feeling that's present in all of his films. The key difference here is that it's not over-the-top, intimidating, and highly illogical dream world of, for example, Eraserhead. Another important part of Lynch's filmmaking is the concept of mundane. It is closely connected to the previously mentioned idea of a familiar space that the characters occupy, one that seems like it should be safe.
I love you, but you're gonna get it.
Lynch makes widespread use of classic Americana imagery to achieve this effect, using the visuals that feel very comfortable.
It's a sunny, woodsy day in Lumberton, so get those chainsaws out.
No other Lynch film takes this to the extreme that The Straight Story does. Large portions of the film consist of characters in this setting, either going about their daily lives, doing nothing particularly interesting, or having soft conversations that are presented without any cinematic stylization, as natural and minimalistic as it gets. No soundtrack, no interesting camera angles, and minimal physicality in performances.
Why didn't you just take your car?
I don't have a driver's license.
Couldn't he come visit you?
He's had a bad stroke.
This is then contrasted with sequences that are the polar opposite. War music montages play over the slow journey as the camera soars over landscapes and occasionally cuts back to Alvin scooting along. Some may feel that these sequences are redundant and repetitive, like they are there just to fill in the plot gaps and transition from one scene to the next. However, this is actually another staple of Lynch's filmmaking. These transitions from a totally quiet and minimalistic scene to a highly stylized and overly stimulating sequences can be found in almost all of his films. He is known for creating this roller coaster-like pacing, suddenly transitioning from one extreme to another. 1 minute, we're being privy to a civil conversation, and the next minute, it is used to make the viewer unsure of what is dream and what is reality, to create unease and to keep the viewer on edge. As such, Lynch films function as a kind of a shock therapy, thrusting the viewer from a calm state of mind into chaos. In The Straight Story, this filming technique is not used to subvert the mundane, but rather to elevate it. The music montages create a meditative feeling that gives us a chance to ruminate on the latest stage of the journey. Instead of undercutting the established, seemingly positive mood of previous scenes like in his other work, they amplify the meaning that is to be found in these conversational scenes.
Worst part of being old is remembering when you was young.
We are made to feel sentimentally connected to Alvin, like we are experiencing this touching journey alongside with him. In this regard, the film has strong echoes of the so-called transcendental meditation, something that Lynch himself was a vocal supporter of.
The beautiful human being is called enlightenment.
Another interesting aspect of Lynch's filmmaking is his style of shooting. If you look at his films like Blue Velvet, Wild at Heart, and to some extent Eraserhead, you may notice that his camera work is somewhat underwhelming.
I can't do this.
And yes, while he does make strong use of moving camera and close-ups, most notably in Lost Highway and Mulholland Drive, a surprising amount of scenes are filmed with flat, wide, eye-level shots.
I'm ready.
This lack of interesting camera work might seem uncreative on the surface, but it's important to consider what's in front of the camera in most of these cases, something either inexplicable, shocking, upsetting. This tends to negate the need for more complex shots. Because the straight story is so tame and subdued by comparison, the lack of interesting shots is far more apparent. The camera work could be described as stale. Nothing is emphasized. Characters are shown in their full environment. However, it's important to note that this approach to filming isn't out of laziness or a lack of skills. The fact of the matter is that Lynch is a painter at heart. He approaches his scene compositions as if they are a painting. The more you show, the richer the piece. Instead of portraying his characters in focus, he presents them as a part of a living, breathing world, one that could be a character itself. But here again, we run into another interesting Lynchian dichotomy. The straight story, similarly to Eraserhead and Blue Velvet, are tales told from the perspective of a single main character. For the most part, we only know and see what the protagonist experiences. The story plays out from their point of view.
I've got to make this trip on my own.
In most films like this, outside of Lynch's body of work, the director would probably use subjective camera shots more often. In the straight story though, POV shots are outnumbered, and the handful of times that they are used, it's mostly out of simple logic dictated by the necessity of the scene, rather than the personal creative choice. Instead, Lynch makes liberal use of objective shots, shots that are not taken from any character's perspective, but are instead neutral and detached. This is another juxtaposition that contributes to the strange dreamlike quality. In the film, we are made to feel like we are traveling alongside Alvin, but at the same time, we remain detached, keeping him at an arm's length. We are a neutral observer with no control, experiencing the film passively, just like we experience dreams.
The sky is sure full of stars tonight.
After all of this analysis, you might be wondering, what does the straight story have to offer?
Oh, geez, Dad.
It is comprised of mundanity with no surreal or shocking payoffs, filmed with simplistic and quote-unquote boring camera work, and it's completely devoid of the twisted darkness that Lynch fans have come to love. All of this is true. The Straight Story is David Lynch's most un-Lynchian film ever, and yet, it might also be one of his best, most affecting works. It's extremely minimalistic, slow-burning, but also unexpectedly poignant. What it lacks in bombast and excitement, it more than makes up for with emotions and deep relatability.
Rose, darling, I'm not dead yet.
It is a prime example of how less can be more, and how personal is also universal.
I can see it in a man right away.
Above all else, the Straight Story is unflinchingly human.
It's been a genuine pleasure having you here, Alvin.
The journey of a person coming to terms with mortality and dealing with regret is something that each and every one of us will have to experience at some point in our lives.
I still want to finish this the way I started.
Throughout his career, there have been accusations leveled at Lynch that his films are meaningless, only existing for pure shock value and unbridled weirdness. The Straight Story is a powerful counter to that statement. It solidifies Lynch as an auteur that can tell impactful, heartfelt stories with the same deftness that he bends and twists our perception of reality and consciousness.
It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Still not convinced? Sit down and try to watch the movie with undivided attention. If it doesn't make you shed a tear, or at the very least feel something, then you might be under the influence of a Lynchian villain yourself. If you made it this far, big thank you for watching all the way until the end. And if you want to watch more videos like this, make sure to subscribe, as more will be coming soon. Peace!